The shelter. I know our route to Ivan and Ruby by heart, and I can't help tugging a bit even though I'm not supposed to. It's been a couple days since I've seen my pals, and I need my friend fix like I need air and water and belly rubs. We don't live far, down to the end of the street, around a corner, good news source there, then a few more blocks. When I walk, Julia, well, okay, I suppose it looks like she's walking me, but I beg to differ. There's a place we pass that always makes me jumpy and bummed. It's an animal shelter. And I know it's a place for pets who don't have a safe home of their own. When I was abandoned on the highway just a few weeks old, a nice cage with a soft towel in it and a bowl of fresh water, well, I would have given just about anything for that. Still, when I walk by and hear all those desperate barks and meows and squeaks, it gets to me. Sometimes having great hearing is a pain. Thing is, I realize I have a home and the gang in there doesn't, and I try not to think about stuff like that, you know? I mean, it's not like I can do anything about their tough breaks, right? And in fairness, maybe those animals aren't like me. I've always been a resilient, hard-working sort. Maybe some of those guys even made their own bad luck. Don't get me wrong. I try to be a nice guy. I do what I can to make the world a better place, sure. Chat with guinea pigs, lick the strawberry jelly off Julia's hand, do my wagon dance when the wrens come home to make him feel good. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. But like I said before, you gotta look out for numero uno. Guess that's why the shelter harshes my mellow. It's just, I'd rather not have to hear those guys every time I walk by. It makes me sad. Reminds me of the bad old days. Drulius. I knew this guy back when I hung out at the mall with Ivan and Ruby. Nice dog named Drulius. Basic mutt, maybe some lab and golden in there somewhere. He'd done some hard time at a couple shelters. One of those dogs you knew had seen more than his share of the bad stuff the world can throw your way. One ear bitten off, scars, a limp. Julius lived in his backyard, winter, summer, spring, fall, chained up mostly, flies on his food, empty water bowl way too often. Still, he always had a nice word to say when I'd pass him on my daily rounds, checking out the neighborhood trash cans. Once I saw his owner again, that word, step onto the back porch. Julius was barking, but he had a good reason. A stranger had just passed by. Barking is what we're supposed to do in that circumstance, right? Maybe he's the UPS guy. Maybe he's a serial killer. I mean, come on, we're not the FBI. So, anyways, owner came out, big guy, mean looking, gave Julius a hard kick with his boot, yelled, "Shut up, you fool!" Disappeared. Julius looked at me, kind of embarrassed. We kept talking. A few minutes later, the owner came out again, put some towels on a line. Julius headed over, tail between his legs, cowering, saying, "I'm sorry, I love you, I'm yours, yours, yours," with his whole dog being. Guy completely ignored him and headed inside. "He's having a tough time," said Julius when the guy was gone. "He's a jerk," I said, because subtlety is not my strong point. "No, he loves me, he does. He has a funny way of showing it." "Humans," said Julius, licking a sore on his leg. "You know how they can be." "Do I ever? Well, we gotta stay true. Love 'em, forgive 'em." I thought about that. Thought about it a lot. "Why, though?" I finally asked. "Why do we have to forgive them?" Julius looked shocked and confused, as if I'd just asked why cheese tastes so good. "It just does." "That's the way it is," he said. "That's what we do, Bob." I started to reply, but I managed to hold my tongue, which is not easy for me. It's a very long tongue with a mind of its own. There was no point in making Julius feel worse than he already did. Later that morning, I found half a turkey sandwich, gave the whole thing to him. Well, okay, I had a taste first, but still. Forgiveness. Seems like forgiving humans is one of those doggy things we're all supposed to do, like having zoomies or doing bed boogies. It's written into our canine souls. Well, somehow I didn't get the memo, the one that apparently went out to every other dog on the planet about forgiveness. Why should I forgive the humans who tossed me and my siblings out into the night? When you forgive, you lose your anger, and when you lose your anger, you get weak, and when you're weak, you can get hurt all over again. The art of human watching. By the time we reach the park, the sky is definitely in a bad mood. Gray clouds galloping like panicked horses, the nervous scent of rain on the way, the kind that makes you antsy in your own skin. When we get near the employee entrance, I hop into Julia's backpack like always. We enter through the special gate, where George shows his ID, checks in, and says hi to the staff. Pet dogs aren't allowed at the park. Natch. Foxes, wolves, jackals, my dog cousins, they are. But in my opinion, even though they're technically part of my extended family, they're nothing like dogs. Only dogs have perfected the art of human watching. The smartest thing we ever did was figure out how important the human gaze is. So often when we follow our owner's eyes, we are rewarded with something amazing. A smelly sock, a glazed donut that's fallen on a smelly sock. We follow every blink, every sidelong glance. We see it wherever it is, before humans do. We understand before they do. And if there's a glazed donut involved, we eat it before they do. Puppy eyes. It's mid-morning, still pretty early. There aren't many visitors around yet. We've got a meeting in 20, George tells a couple of workers. Hank and Sonia groan. Just a quick one, going over contingency plans one last time in case there's any flooding. During the last hurricane, a small part of the park flooded, mostly near Reptileville. George helped move cages. He came home smelling like cotton moths and copperheads. It was all I could do not to barf. Weather Service just issued a tornado watch, Hank says. I thought we were having a hurricane, Julia says. We are, Gus, but sometimes tornadoes are spawned during hurricanes, George explains. Julia frowns. But a watch means maybe, not for sure, right? Yeah, but I want you to head home, George says, just in case. Please, Dad, just 10 minutes, Julia says. She's using the special voice she reserves for moments when she really, really wants something from her parents. I guess kids manipulate their moms and dads the same way dogs manipulate humans. I don't know, George begins. I promised Bob. I figured that's my cue to pop my head out and look adorable, so I do. Hey, Bob, says Hank. Sonia reaches over and scratches my ears. I'm pretty popular around the park. I give George my best puppy eyes, and he caves. 10 minutes, tops, he says. Meet me back here. Puppy eyes. Works every time. Mr. Oog. Here's how I figure puppy eyes got their start. Cave humans were sitting around a fire wearing mammoth fur and grunting about how there was nothing on TV because TV hadn't been invented yet, and some silly wolf thought, whoa, they've got leftover mammoth meat. And he probably whimpered and cowered and did a tummy display and looked pathetic even that Mr. Oog finally tossed him a bone. And soon enough, a few zillion years later, voila, man's best friend. And after all that time, there's a thing, like a magnetic attraction between dogs and humans. We've studied them for so long we can read every twitch and sigh. Suppose it was easier than chasing down mammoths. And I get it, I do. The behind the ear scratch, the food in a fancy bowl, the bed by the fireplace. Gotta admit that Julie is pretty fun to hang out with. And I'm grateful, really I am, that her family took me in. Still, I don't need them. You need someone, eventually they let you down, and you end up feeling like a real doofus. The park. As Julia walks, I sneak peeks out of her backpack, like I always do. We pass the meerkat family poking out from their den holes like a whack-a-mole game they used to have at Max Small. I see the flashy flamingos with their one-legged balancing act and the terrifyingly beautiful tigers. Even their cute cubs give me the willies. Families, I've noticed, take a lot of different shapes. Jim and Joe and the penguins adopted an abandoned egg, and they're all the sweetest doting parents you ever saw. I see it with humans at the park too. Families of all shapes and sizes and colors and genders, and yep, they all seem to do just fine. We round a corner past Sea Otter Alley. Oliver and Olivia are floating calmly on their backs, holding each other's paws. It's pretty adorable, I have to admit. But me, I don't need the trouble that comes with family. Babies puking, toddlers whining, spouses nagging. Talk about a design flaw. Change. The park's pretty big. Lots of twisty paths and fascinating smells. All the parts have names. There's African, Aviary, the Outback, Penguin Cove, Lemurland. That it's like puzzle pieces of the world. A little Africa here, a little Asia there. Dogs, you can find us pretty much everywhere. Our territory is Earth. As long as we're hooked up with humans, that is. Along the shady paths, volunteer guides will answer your questions. They'll tell you about how animals used to roam one part of the world or another until things changed. Things change. That's one thing I've figured out. Don't ever assume a little patch of the planet belongs to you. Things change. Boxes go flying. My inner wolf. On our way, we always stop by the wolf habitat. Julia loves wolves, probably because they remind her of me. You have to look hard, maybe squint a little, but if you try, you can catch a hint of my inner wolf. It's in the eyes mostly, also in my distinguished profile. I dream I'm a wolf sometimes, and when I wake up, I'm panting and my fur is on alert, and I'm feeling, yeah, the world could hurt me, but I could hurt the world right back, even harder. Like there's a dangerous hard part of me chained inside, struggling to go free, and just, I don't know, get even. That's when I go see what's for breakfast. Kimu. There's a gray wolf at the park who makes me a little jittery. Jittery as in sometimes worry he might like to eat me. His name is Kimu, and we struck up a conversation when a mutual acquaintance of ours, a mockingbird called Mitch, introduced us one day. Like Nutwit, Mitch likes to taunt me because I'm domesticated. Gives me a lot of grief about how free he is, soaring stringless over the whole town. I'm not the only one who's pampered, I said one day. I mean, look at Kimu. He's not exactly running wild. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I regretted them, and when I looked at Kimu's "I could kill you with one quick bite" expression, I really regretted them. In any case, I said, moving the subject along, I've lived wild. It ain't a picnic for a dog. What was it like? Kimu said. He moved closer to the edge of his domain. He had a strange odor, intense and scary, and a little bit intoxicating. Well, I was just a pup, I said, abandoned by the side of the highway. Kimu was listening intently. Must have been tough. All I could think of was food, water. I didn't like the catch in my voice. Owl got me. Those guys are fierce, Kimu said. Can't hear them coming. I know, right? I relaxed a little. I hate owls, said Mitch. Hate them with a passion. They eat birds, you know. So do wolves, said Kimu, giving Mitch a meaningful look. So you were wild once? I asked Kimu. Never. Born and raised in captivity. Suzu over there? She was. She told us stories that would curl your fur. Honestly, it's nice to have a roof over my head. It's tough out there, man. Really tough. I suppose, said Kimu. I looked at him, and, for the first time, wondered if I really did have any wolf in me. He was a majestic animal, with teeth that could shred a tree trunk. I am also majestic, but more portable, with teeth that could mangle a pencil with enough time and effort. Hey Bob, Mitch said, do dogs howl the way wolves do? Of course we do. Let's hear something. A duet, maybe. He fluttered his wings, revealing startling patches of white. Do you know Talk to the Animals? They play on the carousel. They play that on the carousel. Go away, Mitch, said Kimu with just the right amount of menace in his voice. Come on, just a little howling. Pretend there's a moon. Pretend you're free. Pretend. Kimu growled, and so did I. His was impressive, guttural, deep. It spoke of death and dismemberment and all kinds of unpleasant bird nightmares. I growled too. It spoke of me being mildly peeved. Still, Mitch got the message. He disappeared, a blur of wings. Actually, I've never howled at the moon, I admitted. Me neither, said Kimu. I'd feel kind of silly doing it here. Enrichment. We're almost to my favorite spot in the park. The great thing for me is that one corner of Gorilla World is juts up against Elephant Odyssey, the area where Ruby lives. A low stone wall separates the two spaces, and there's a moat on the elephant side. The sections connect like two slices of pie, and my secret spot is right at the center, where I can hang out with my crew. Ivan and Ruby both have access to indoor habitats, which is great when the weather isn't cooperating. The indoor space for gorillas ain't bad. I call it the Gorilla Villa. It has tons of ropes and hammocks and branches to climb. Humans watch through a thick wall of glass while the young gorillas run around like kids at recess. But whenever Julia and I visit, we can almost always find Ivan and Ruby outside. We trudge up a little rise, though it isn't much of a hill. We live in a pretty flat part of the world. From there I can see just about everything. The park, the parking lot, the creek. Far beyond that, every now and then, I can even catch a glimpse of the ocean. My secret place is a little hard to get to, right near the keeper's shed, nicely hidden by the trees and bushes. Under a big magnolia tree there's a bench shaped like a gorilla holding out his arms. Julia likes to sit there and draw. Sometimes she does her homework, which smells like frustration with a hint of eraser. Whenever I visit, Julia props me up on the stone wall that separates Julia from Ivan's. Visitors can't see me, and the keepers pretend not to see me. If they caught any other dog there, he'd be out in a heartbeat. But Ivan and Ruby and I have a history. I make them happy. I'm what you might call enrichment. At the park, they try to keep the animals engaged with surprises and challenges and changes to their environment. That's what enrichment is all about. The gorillas get watermelons to demolish and boxes to hide in and markers for drawing. The elephants get sprinklers and flavored water and elephant sized rubber balls. Not exactly like a day in the real jungle, of course. But the keepers try as hard as they can to make life interesting. For Ivan and Ruby, I am the ultimate enrichment. I'm their best pal. Walls and bad guys. Julia takes me out of her backpack, and I settle onto the wide stone wall. It's my fave place on the planet, 'cause it means I can see Ivan and Ruby, but I also kind of hate it. I kind of hate it. Walls will do that to you. Ivan, being Ivan, is a mellow kind of guy, takes the good with the bad, only gets angry when he really needs to. When I complain about the walls of the park, he says, walls keep the animals in, but they also keep the bad guys out. Of course, gorillas don't have a whole lot of bad guys to deal with. Elephants either, so humans step in to fill the void. Dogs? Sometimes it feels like we have enemies galore. Everyone wants a piece of us. Humans treat us badly, cars really have it in for us. We even get eaten by coyotes, which is kind of like having your cousin invite you over for dinner, then inform you you're the main course. Although I'd probably just be the appetizer. Anyways, after those 27 years stuck in a mall, Ivan is one of those glass half full kind of guys when it comes to the walls surrounding him. Glad to be with others of his own kind, cared for by smart, loving humans. I'm more of a water bowl of power half empty kind of guy. Every time I leave Ivan and Ruby, I'm painfully aware that I can leave. Ivan's address is Gorilla World. Ruby's is Elephant Odyssey. And me, I guess my address is the same as Julia and George and Sarah's, 1249 Hindman Avenue. I mean, of course it is. I've been living there for a whole year now. It is. And yet sometimes I still wake up at night and think, gotta find shelter, gotta find safety, gotta find somewhere to belong. Guess I don't want to get too comfortable.